We all know that being too connected to our technology can sometimes be a bad thing. Well, in the new Netflix original movie, Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight, not having technology might get the better of it. In a Polish forest, a group of teenagers converges for an adventure camp. At this camp, they are completely devoid of technology in order to really better relate to themselves and to grow themselves personally and to grow interpersonal relationships. As the groups break up to go off on their adventures, one team encounters an unexpected terror. In this Polish horror, we don't get a ton of character development. And that's okay because most of the characters are throwaway. I mean, this is a horror movie where really the main goal is to pick people off. We get enough development on a couple of the key players where we are drawn to them a little bit, and through their personalities, we begin to connect with them slightly. As the movie progresses, it's easy to see how it borrows and sometimes outright steals ideas and scenes from other horror movies. There's a scene right out of one of the Friday the 13th sequels. You also get the feels of Scream, where we are told some rules about surviving a horror. There's even elements that feel like they come straight out of Wrong Turn or The Hills Have Eyes. Now, when you smash all of these together, it does still make a pretty fun horror to watch. One thing that I absolutely adored in this film is the use of practical effects. I mean, they use them all over the place, and they are done super effectively. I mean, everything looks very realistic. It's buyable. Like, when you see the gore and the violence that happens, it looks legit. And there is a ton of gore and violence in this. Now, not all of the time do they focus on it and show it. Sometimes we get it just off to the side where we see some of the splatter or we see some of the effects. Some of it we just hear sounds, and then some of it we do watch it straight on. As we follow this one group as they break off to go on their adventure, the characters in this are your pretty standard fare and stereotypical ones that you would put into a group that you were sending off into the forest. We have kind of the brainless bimbo, we have the jock, we have the nerd, we have the character with the broken backstory and the deep hidden hurt. And then we also have the one who has a hidden secret. And truly, like I said, most of their stories are inconsequential because we're just here to watch them die. Some things that I did find funny or odd is there is a camp counselor, or really the camp director, who, as he's giving the speech at the very beginning of the movie, he has just these weird looks that he gives. I mean, sometimes he's pleased with himself and sometimes he's a little horrified with what he's saying, except the facial expressions don't match the words. And at times he looks a little bit like he's doing a Bobcat Goldthwait impression. And then we have the counselor who goes off with this small group of teenagers, and she looks like she's hardcore. I mean, she looks like she's prepared. She looks like she is ready for anything. I mean, she comes decked out. She looks like somebody that you would trust to take you and some other people into the deep, dark woods. But at the first little sign of trouble, she's unprepared. I mean, she doesn't have any of the supplies that you would need just in basic first aid, which is kind of odd to me. And then she doesn't have any type of like life-saving equipment, whether that is something for offense or defense. Now, the villain in this is pretty cool. I mean, I really enjoyed just seeing it and experiencing it. I mean, again, the practical effects really work, and I loved getting the backstory too, up until a point. The story of the villain is being told, and I'm buying it, and I'm loving it, and all of it makes sense and fits within the narrative that they've built, until this 1 second. They make a choice. The filmmakers and the storytellers make a choice to turn this wildly sci-fi where it could have, up until this point, had been grounded in reality. And really, they just take it one little part where then it makes it feel more out of the X-Files or even Venom than something that, you know what, I could have bought this. I could have believed this. And even the effects of what happens to these people was real. I mean, you could buy it. It's plausible. But when they did that, it broke me out of that narrative. It just stopped it for a moment because I was like, oh man, that's disappointing that you took this element or took this direction. Now, had they started out as a sci-fi horror, I'm fully on board. I would love that. That would be outstanding. But everything up until this point and after that point is not sci-fi. It's just this one little moment, and that it was just poor writing. I really enjoyed the soundtrack in this because it is pleasantly unsettling. I mean, it is happy and upbeat at all of the wrong moments, where it's playing this melodic tune And the scene that we're watching, or the tension that is being built, is completely counteracting that music, and it's messing with you. And then they will throw in very discordant notes into this, which just, yeah, they tweak you out, and it really works all together. I loved it. And the soundtrack is not blaring, it's not big, it's not over the top, it's not even pushing itself into the foreground. It's just there lightly playing through certain scenes, and it really does mess with you. The filmmakers used the scene and the setting so well to their advantage in this because it's taking place in the forest. And so a lot of this is quiet, or the characters find themselves in quiet spots or quiet situations where the smallest noise could give them away. And I love how isolating, how trapped that makes you feel, because you just feel like, I mean, there is really mounting tension and even urgency for them to hold their breath, to keep the pounding, the heart beating, any of that, those sounds, just silent, and to suppress all of that. And pretty much right from the get-go, there is mounting tension. I mean, they don't really waste too much time to get into the story and to get into the, woof, okay, this is what we're watching, and ooh, I'm intrigued. I'm a little freaked out, and more so than anything, I'm unsettled. Like, I don't really know what's going on because we don't always see the villain. We hear sounds, we see motions and movements, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that they save some of that for a while, that we're just not shown it right off the bat, and then it ruins anything that they're trying to build. And the story moves along pretty well also. There are moments where it feels like there's some downtime, where we see a character just speaking, or they're sitting, and you have them off to the side, so we get most of the screen shows us the background. And so I love that I sit in anticipating just tension, like, is something gonna happen? Is there something that's gonna pop out? Am I going to see movement? What is that? And so even the dialogue at that moment is not necessarily as important as what it's doing to me with just the framing of the shot. There is a little bit of absurdity and cheesiness in this film that's interspersed here and there. Some of it comes from some of the dialogue or just the actions, but for the most part, it really works within the grand scheme of everything. And that absurdity and that cheesiness barely pokes its head out. I mean, it's here little bits randomly. And so I don't think that it ruined it or it pulled me out of what's going on and of the narrative. And while I don't think this is absolutely a scary movie, the tension and the anxiety that it builds, and just from the chase and from the close quarters, that oppressiveness, the isolation, the loneliness, the fear that the film is putting the characters through, that really works. And so overall, this isn't a bad film to watch, especially if you're looking for something that has some good tension and then a ton of gore. There is sex, nudity, profanity, and a ton of gory violence. I give Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight 3 out of 5 couches. So are you watching anything creepy right now? I'd love to know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for catching with me.